so for recording number 4, we're going to kind of go into book issues and review. So attention, they kind of talk about it at the start there. If you turn to page, well, they talk about the neuropsychology. Page 276, key areas of the brain. Key areas of the brain. Your superior colliculus with visual follows eye movements. One of the key areas we talked about with attention, though, was these junctions in the temporal parietal lobe very much. Here are the key brain structures and areas involved with attention. So they do that. They talk about people who have problems with that. If you look at page 277, people with various problems with attentional tasks. They don't draw things right. They don't look at things right. Let's see. Neglect and Berlin syndrome. You don't need to know that. Turn to page 281. We have different models of attention. We talked a lot about that. The cocktail party effect. Brittany. The cocktail party effect. Brittany. What was the cocktail party effect? It's that you get in some semantic information. This posed problems for whose original theory that was developed. We talked about different types of theories that were developed with attention. The cocktail party effect caused problems for whose theory? Broadbent's model, which suggested that we have an early filter, so we really don't get anything in. The idea that you'll understand your name posed a problem for that, and Carrie kind of goes through that. We can get into some illusions here. Basically, the dichotic listening task, we talked a lot about that. You listen to things, you repeat them. What is that task called? If you have the headphones on and you listen in both ears and you have to say what's going on in one ear, what is that called? What kind of task is that called? Dichotic listening with shadowing. You're asked to shadow a message, and then they ask you questions about what did you hear in your unattended ear. We have the early versus the late selection models. Early says you don't really get anything in the unattended ear. The late models say you do get stuff in, and then we even had, so you got Broadbent models in there. And then you had the cocktail party saying we get in stuff late. And then we had the attenuation model of things. If you even look at page 287, they look at how things change in the brain waves when you're doing these activities. So they look at all the brain activities and the realms going on there. The attenuator model kind of got into that as well. Let's see. See if there's anything else in chapter 7. They talk about Treisman's ideas. Treisman came up with the idea of this attenuator model that basically you pay less attention as things go on. And they look at this idea of what do you process in the unattended ear and how are the brain waves related to that. So that's very much cognitive neuroscience types of ideas there. Let's see if there's anything important there. We'll continue on. If you turn to page 304, once again, just the idea of here are all the key areas of the brain. The reason I don't put as much focus on this, I think it's important to know these areas, but knowing the areas isn't going to necessarily help people because this is what kind of research? Is this basic or applied research? Basic or applied? Does anybody know the difference between basic versus applied? In basic research, what do you try to do? Just want to understand how something works. And applied, you try to help people with various things. So chapter 7 kind of covers that. And if you go to page 312, once again, here are the key areas. Very much, if you look at the picture on page 312, does that kind of look like a type reductionistic model or a token reductionistic model? What would you say, that picture on 312? This area does this, that area does that, this area does this. Type or token reductionism? Any thoughts?
Oh, it would be type.
It would be type. Very specific key brain areas that are being activated here for these things to go on. And they look at the brain regions that are critical in this process. So cognitive neuroscience tends to be very type reductionistic with its methodologies on things. Okay, so that'll kind of cover the book part of the equation. Let's actually go into that lecture 2, that kind of attentional theory information. So we talked about Broadbent's theory, and even, what was the other one? Automatic, actually that was separate. But Broadbent's theory versus Deutsch and Deutsch, the idea of the early filter versus the late filter, how much information gets in. And Treisman's ideas that kind of map to that, so you should know those ideas, and that's one theory of attention. What was a second theory that we talked about when we talked about driving, skiing, or even snowboarding? Kind of came to mind. Was the Schifrin and Snyder model? Say again? Yeah, automatic versus controlled processes. So are things automatic or are they controlled? Automatic processes, you can do lots of activities. They happen almost unconsciously. You turn on the car, you pull out, but when you were first learning how to do it, serial, one at a time, requires a lot of resources, and you can't do much of it, so you should know the difference between automatic and controlled processes, and that article kind of covered that. And then we went into the third kind of main idea, which was the idea of driving behavior and using cellular phones and so forth. Which theory did we get into with that one? Multiple resource theory, which talked a lot about doing tasks simultaneously. Now, do some tasks make sense to do simultaneously? What kind of tasks make sense to do simultaneously? Tapping your foot, playing an instrument. They kind of help each other out. They're doing different types of things, but they kind of enhance each other. But then we get into realms that aren't so useful, such as what?
Texting and driving.
Texting and driving, because the texting is requiring a lot of high cognitive load, like we talked about in that experiment from today. The high cognitive load is really mapping in the dual task or the multiple resource theory too much, and it's causing you probably on your primary task, which is what? When you're on the road, driving. Did I show some evidence of this a couple weeks ago? I said I got it in my first fender bender. It was actually interesting. This is a little aside. I called my insurance company. I said, never had an accident before. Been with them for 10 years, a driver forgiveness rule. Have you heard about this? Yes, there is a driver first offense, minor fender bender, what is it called? I just forgot the word I said. A forgiveness rule, but I found out what the forgiveness rule was. It wasn't really a forgiveness rule. It was you're not going to be charged a whole bunch of money now, but your premiums will go up for 3 years. So it was kind of a marketing campaign to say we have a forgiveness rule. We won't tack on all these charges, but your premiums will go up for 3 years, and then they'll go back down again. So it was very much a marketing idea. But the idea is if you're doing various things on the test, there's a good chance that you'll be given some sort of article that talks about dual tasking, and you'll have to say what's going on, what the findings are, and then many times tracing it back to Wiccan's ideas of dual task. And is it okay to listen to music when you're driving? Yes, it is. What's the problem with texting while you're driving, or even what I was doing, trying to plug the phone in to get charged up? You're doing what? Diverting attention into the secondary task. And what happens if an emergency presents itself on the road? Does that happen? What's that?
Response time.
Response time is a lot slower when you're driving 60, 70 miles per hour. Can that matter? Yep, it can. It can a great deal. I've been reading these articles. Do I do a lot more driving in my life this semester than I've ever done in my whole entire existence? Yes. Am I doing some dual tasks sometimes? Yes. Do I have to be very careful about that? Yes. What I feel comfortable doing when I'm driving is putting the cell phone on my lap and putting it on speakerphone and talking. For some people that's okay, but we've even seen articles where it's not the motor activity of holding the phone, but it's actually what? The cognitive load. You have to be able to say, hey, it's a snowstorm here. I have to disconnect from talking to you. You always, when you call your friends up on the cell phone, is this a good time to be talking? It's a good question to ask, because if they're in a situation of high cognitive load, are they doing a lot of processing there, like that article? Yeah, and if you're getting in an advanced conversation about why we had a fight today, or what are you going to be planning for the rest of the week, what would that article that we talked about at the beginning of the class suggest? You might not be able to do it right, and mirror neurons, well, mirror neurons are not important in that respect, but dual task processing might, and multiple resource theory could easily attach to that. So you'll be asked about these various theories on the test, which ones might map the best. If you choose the wrong answer on the test, it's still okay to go into details on why. You'll still get some partial credit for doing that. And finally, last but not least, so we've kind of covered attention and attentional theories here. Let's talk a little bit about the chess playing situation and problem solving. The very classic study that you need to know about was the study by Chase and Simon. What did they do in that particular study? For novices and expert chess players, what did they do?
They tested the memory.
They tested their memory for positions that were random or normal chess positions. And what did they basically find? That if you were an expert, you had a high rating. How were you?
The experts remembered more of the common ones.
Of the common positions.
The random ones, everybody
Remembered the same. So Chase and Simon came to the conclusion in this, was this a longitudinal or cross-sectional study? All right? Was this a cross-section? Yeah, this was cross-sectional. They basically came to the conclusion on this cross-sectional study that the reason experts are experts was for what particular reason? They just simply have a better memory. Could there be a flaw in that situation? Yeah, there could be a flaw in that situation, because it's not just a memory-based system, but many times it goes into creativity and problem solving, that you get better at predicting what your opposition is doing, planning things out, orchestrating things. What might be a better study to design? We could really look at this situation. Did I go at different levels in my chess playing career? What could you do with somebody like me or other people who are just starting to play chess?
Like track your progress as you get better at chess, and like see how much you remember and how those numbers change.
So track the progress and see what changes go on. What kind of study would that be called? A longitudinal study, and not just see if memory gets better, which it probably would, but see if other things get better as well, such as what? Problem solving, planning ahead, orchestrating the pieces. I know that when I went from first starting, I understood the horse trick and how to pin a bishop, but when I got really, really good, I could see the whole board. I could predict what my opposition was going to do. I could creatively plan to defend that, go on the offensive, strategize and see things and plan obstacles, and it was really problem solving going on, not simply what? Not simply just a memory difference. So many times as you go on with your careers, could have actually gone into this in a research realm? I could have. Many times as you guys go on for your future careers, if you're really passionate about something, like I was about chess playing, go into a field and look at it. Was I passionate about asthma? Yes, very passionate about asthma as well. And your passion for what you care about can many times drive you to go into a field and say, hey, I'm going to take What is that called when you take the perspective of, I'm just going to look at this from how I experience that? What is that actually called, that approach? Can't really spell it too well. The phenomenological approach. You interview people, you have your own phenomenological experiences, and you say, hey, I'm looking at this research and it doesn't make sense. I think there's a better way to do it. My knowledge of chess playing, my knowledge of asthma, it was my personal experiences phenomenologically with those situations that led me to go into asthma. I got some good mentorship on that as well. It can lead you into a good career. Do you all have passions that you care about in this world? If you're going to go and help people out, if you're helping people, is that more basic or applied types of research? It's applied. Do you remember what I told you my master's and dissertation was on? Hand clapping and how people read words were those basic or applied cognitive topics. Very basic. I wanted to help people out, so asthma, kind of applied cognitive psychology into teaching and learning is the way that I've gone. So the test will be posted probably by, the test is on Thursday, so I can probably have the test up for you by tomorrow. Would that help people out in any way? Would it help people to have it out?
Yes, because I'm traveling on Thursday and I have a lab on Thursday afternoon, so that takes.
So if I can post it by Wednesday morning, that would be a good thing for you? Okay, so I'll have it posted by Wednesday morning. Test will be posted. Any other, so the test, we've only had 3 classes, so you'll probably only have 4 questions on the test instead of 5, I think. But once again, the things we focused on here are the review, the chess playing situation and some of the situations there, the dual task. We really focused in on that article at the start of class, so you really want to know that well. Some of the book stuff, some of the different theories of attention will be good to know. Do you guys have any comments or questions for me? So when we meet next week, we'll start to go over memory. This will be a lot easier for me because I've been teaching memory for many years, so we'll have some fun, get into brain stuff, and talk about memory and cognitive activities as well. Thank you for your attention. Put in the name tags here.